Because we have so many distinguished business folks from Pensacola sitting here on the front row staring at me, I'm going to reverse the order. Also, Fred Donovan heard about the Georgia Tech program, so he's got to get back to the office and check it out. I am going to reverse the order between Dr. Lewis and Dr. Barnett and call on Dr. Jim Barnett.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. Good morning, Board of Trustees, Provost Saunders, Cabinet members, and those in attendance. On behalf of Business Enterprises, Inc., I am extremely pleased to introduce the Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions primary leaders who will work with us on University Park and the Northwest Retirement Village public-private partnerships. 3 key points before I bring them forward. 1, we have one time to get these 2 developments correct, to get them right the first time, and it will be done. 2, the components within University Park and Northwest Retirement Village will be located and sized correctly for the functions that are planned. They will be achievable, and they will be completed with quality, because the results of those will be remembered long after price is forgotten. 3, we've chosen the right team, and I'm very happy with the team. They have helped us to this point, and they will continue working with us for several years through multiple phases to help develop what we have planned, what you have approved, but yet we cannot yet see. Beyond these 6 gentlemen that are with us today are a tremendous amount of production staff that are behind the scenes, subcontractors and vendors that are yet to be seen, people in the community that will be involved. So the 6 people that you see here on Balfour Beatty Camp Solutions team is just a tip of the iceberg as to what it takes to pull a public-private partnership together, and I'm extremely pleased. In addition, I want to recognize the key UWF leaders that will be involved in this project as well. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Balfour Beatty team. And I would ask them, as I call their names, to join me at the podium to the left. First of all, Mr. Bob Shepko. He's the division president of Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions. His responsibility is essentially everything on the Balfour Beatty Campus Solutions side. Bob lives in Frederick, Maryland, close to Alexandria, Virginia. Mr. Andrew Clayman. He's the vice president for development for Concord East Ridge. And Andrew's responsibility is pre-construction services, and he lives in Washington, D.C. Donovan Hicks. He's a corporate general counsel for Provident Resources Group, a 501c3 member on the team. Donovan lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and had a comment the other day about football, but I will keep that. We aren't yet ready to schedule LSU yet. Miller Caldwell, the president of Caldwell Associates, an architectural team member here from Pensacola. Miller is responsible for the coordination of all the design and construction services, and he resides his office here locally. Mr. Mike Moret, president of the Moret Company. Mike will be responsible for the construction services as well. He has an office here in Pensacola. Mr. Fred Donovan, the president of Baskerville Donovan. Their responsibility Fred's firm will have is all the civil engineering, which is huge in this project, and office as well in Pensacola. And from UWF, first of all, I want to recognize President Bentz and the cabinet, because throughout this project, this president and cabinet is going to be involved to provide direction that is very significant for us. Now it's with great pleasure that I recognize other key UWF leaders and invite them to my right at the podium. From the Division of Business, Finance, and Facilities, Ms. Pat Lott, our Associate General Counsel. Chairman Bear, it's no surprise I wanted her at my side for this presentation. Always at my side. Ms. Ellen Till, Director of Business and Auxiliary Services. Ellen supervises parking and transportation and key components within University Park. Mr. Dave O'Brien, the Associate Vice President for Business and Property Development, could not be with us this day. His wife, Sally, donated one of her kidneys to a family member Wednesday morning, and she's getting along very, very well. From the Division of Student Affairs, Dr. Jim Hurd, Senior Associate Vice President. Dr. Ruth Davison, Director of Housing and Residence Life. Mr. Dave Scott, Director of Athletics. And from the Division of Advancement, Ms. Megan Gonzalez, the Director of Public Relations. At this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Bob Shipko to come to the podium and give a brief greeting, and then I will conclude.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. This is my speech in here, just so you know. No, I do want to say thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman, to the Board of Trustees, to the administrators, to the faculty, and to the staff for this great honor that we have bestowed upon this team. There is a vision here. It is one that is an incredible vision, and it's one that higher education needs to embrace as it moves forward. What you have here is an assembled team of good-looking folks that sit in the front row. That's how they got chosen. But no, they truly represent what it takes to get a project and a program done. This is a partnership. It is one that is going to take time to continue to build on and to deliver that vision. We are excited and honored about that opportunity. And we know that working with the staff, the administration, and the board, it will get done. It's taking the right steps at the right time. As Dr. Barnett said, we have one opportunity to get it right. So the planning to execute this is incredibly important for all of us. We're taking the time, we're doing the due diligence to make sure that what we provide to the university is exactly what it is you're looking for. A deliverable project based upon an open communication, dialogue, and a partnership built on trust. And that's what this team represents. Many of these folks you know, they're part of the community, they're part of our team, they've become our friends. And with that, we know we will turn this campus plan into reality. It will get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And finally, the direction that this team was given during the kickoff planning meeting of July 24th was to provide the University of West Florida 21st century physical growth through achievable public-private partnership and innovation as aligned with the institution's vision, mission, and values. We are on our way. That's exactly what we're going to do, and we thank you for your guidance. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. I do want to add one comment. The UWF campus, as we see it today, needs to be changed for the future. Several years ago, we talked about the opportunity for economic development and growth in our economy here in this community, and we recognized that where we have the opportunity to help local businesses and to look local for our support out here, we need to make sure that we take advantage of that opportunity. This team certainly stands out in that regard, and the campus that we will see in the future, well beyond my time here, will be one that we'll all live to appreciate, and I know that you're a big part of that, and we appreciate your commitment to it. So thank you very much. We're excited about the new look. Thank you. I'd now like to call on Dr. Rod Lewis to present the Haas Center Economic App.
Thank you, Trustee Baer.
Oh, there he is.
Yes. We may have some technical difficulties, so we're not sure yet how we're going to do this. But I did want to introduce you to the Haas Center app this morning. Thank you so much for having me. This is one of those when you say typically you turn off your electronic devices, don't take them out, because we want you to download the Haas Center app. It's an Android compatible, it's iPhone compatible. You can search in the Google Play Store. You can search on your iPhone for Haas Center, and you will pull up the latest and the greatest Haas Center app. And while the boys are bringing this up, I want to introduce the team that was on the design team. It was led by Vad, who is next to me here, and as Provost Saunders mentioned earlier, he won the Myron Zucker Undergraduate Student Design Contest, his team did, for design of a solar array positioning controller, whatever that is. We're not marketing that at the center, but he did design our app as well. We also have Trey, who was on the team in the back. We have Roddy, who leads ITS for us up front. We have Hai Tran, who is back there as well. And then we have Alex, who is a senior at Niceville High School. He received a perfect score on the ACT and a perfect score on the SAT. I'm not sure if UWF is recruiting him yet. But most Ivy League universities already are, so you might want to get in line. And then the other side of the shop, we have Angel and Sarah. We have Jordan, and who am I missing back there? We have Matt and myself and Aaron. Where's Aaron? He's our senior economist. And so we try to make enough money in terms of funding to keep these boys afloat while they do cool things like design apps. And then I'll also say that we are an unfunded shop, but we did receive some money from Dr. Brown to support the development of the app. And I can also say that with the exception of Rick Harper, we have known neither a better advocate nor a truer friend than you, Kim, in my tenure as interim director. So thank you so much. Are we ready? Do you want me back there or up here? Here? All right. Am I good? What'd I do? Promise I know how to do this. All right, Trustee Baer is counting it down. He's beginning to doubt your skills here. One more second. Here we go. Maybe. All right, guys. For those of you who have it on your iPhone, I'll just walk you through it. If you have it up and running or on your iPad device, take a look at it here. So there's some good economic data on here, and what we really meant for this to be was a snapshot of the U.S. economy and a snapshot of the local economy. So for those of you who have it down, if you'll just click on economic data, and you click on Florida metros, and then you want to click on West Florida, you'll see Pensacola. So have you got it from back there? Okay, all right, I'm coming right around. So if you click on economic data, and you click on Florida metros, and West Florida, you'll see various regions here. We have every MSA in the state. Click on Pensacola. And what this is meant to be is really a regional economic dashboard. If there were any data that were available to present up here, it would show you what the economy is doing over time. So you have employment, unemployment. It's updated as the data come out. You can also click on the graphs as well, and they are fully interactive. So if you'll click on the point where it says Pensacola, you don't have wireless in here either. So, all right, here we go. On the Florida side. So if you'll click on the graph, for example, if you'll click on employment right here, it will draw you a beautiful little graph eventually. And then it's fully interactive, so if you're interested in what the point value is in any given time, it'll bring that up as well. And you can compare it to historical data. You get a 5-year estimate. You get a 1-year estimate. And it's for the state of Florida for every MSA. This is all updated automatically within our internal servers, fully designed by the Haas Center team, all of whom are either current or former UWF students, I might add. And if you're interested in what some of the specifics of it mean, so if you're, for example, on the Pensacola side, and you roll all the way down to the retail index, and you say to yourself, what is a retail index? You click on it, and it explains the data to you. So it's completely interactive. It explains itself as you walk through. And it's a pretty neat and interesting tool, and we found that we haven't really started marketing it yet, but a lot of chambers have found it useful. Not so many private individuals, but businesses have also found it useful in their marketing and looking at trends across the economy as well. So it's something that we're very proud of. The boys are looking to take it to the Association of University Business and Economic Researchers. Roddy, who is our senior IT professional, is running 3 seminars there to work with other centers around the state to kind of show them how it's done. So as it turns out, we are one of the largest Association of University Business and Economic Research Centers in the U.S. and the largest non-funded center that is solely contract funded. So we just found that out yesterday. So that's a little bit of an asset that you have here at home in Pensacola. So if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Sorry for the snafus, but we did give it our best shot. Yes, sir.
Do you know if we're the only university that has published something like this in the Florida state system?
We are, yes. And I will tell you, too, I will also add this. This is the only place. What shocked us is when we were looking for data to add to our app and we knew what we wanted it to be, I said, surely you guys can find a place where we can get all this data from one source. That is not the case. So this is the only place in the state of Florida where each one of these data points comes together as a comprehensive dashboard for each local economy, each regional economy, and then the U.S. economy. Yes, ma'am.
The Florida Chamber and the Florida Chamber Foundation over the course of the last several years have put together a score, what they call a scorecard,
right,
on all these different economic and industry measurements, educational measurements, trying to be consistent. Are you guys working with them with this?
We're trying to get them to feature this app on their website because this is solely economic. And so my hope is that eventually we can pull some of their measures in to the app as well to make it more widely available. But in terms of economic data for each region, they don't go nearly as far as the app does in terms of its ability to display data and to be able to interact and to show you all of the indicators, durable goods, non-durable goods sales, up to the minute that we're seeing throughout the economy. So it goes a step beyond that in terms of its dashboard capabilities. And all of this is also repeated on the website and it's expanded upon there too. So really, we want to be a data resource as well as a research hub. Yes, ma'am. Anything else?
Rod,
Yes, sir.
I see this as a marketing initiative.
It is.
This is an outreach where if people use the app, then they may be apt to call you for further services.
Exactly, and that's why we designed it, and that's why we're trying to take it statewide. And also, we hope that other centers around the U.S. will pay my team to design the app internally for them because we know how it's done and we can do it effectively and efficiently. But it is total marketing tool for the Haas Center. We're trying to get our name out there because we have to. Yeah. And anything that you guys can do to help us spread the word, we appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
One more question. I know that you're taking information from MSAs, like for Northwest Florida, your Pensacola, Tallahassee, Panama City, what was the last one?
Crestview, right?
And how would you incorporate a large and thriving community like Fort Walton Beach and their unique kind of industries and such, even though they are not an MSA?
Right. This is part of the snapshot. They're part of the Crestview MSA. So they are incorporated in that metropolitan area. So it's the Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin MSA. As far as the app, I don't know that we'll be able to take it that far because you don't get the data that come at that specific level are usually a year or two old. We want this to be very on time, on target, on market data that we're presenting. But internally, we do a lot of that work on a specific request by request basis. But it's tough to do for something like this. Yes, ma'am. Kim.
Will you also mention your expansion into downtown Pensacola and the open house upcoming?
Yes, we are opening an office in SunTrust Tower in downtown Pensacola, number 30-something. We will invite you all when we are open. The Haas Center team was there until 2 a.m., I believe it was on Tuesday, laying tile. And so we figure if this Haas Center gig does not work out, you will see the Haas Tile Company very soon, and we'll be happy to come to your home for a small fee. No, it's a great team to work with, and so we're very happy to be moving in there. Look for an invitation from us to the open house within the next few weeks. So, yeah.
Just
Right.
one,
Other
just one
questions?
question.
Trustee Patel?
I'm looking at your bed tax information. That's
Yes.
very helpful, because in the past, being an advocate of tourism, we had to struggle through the county to get the information. This
Right.
is really helpful, not just to us, but the entire tourism industry in Florida, because we're always looking to do the comparison of what other counties are doing on bed tax collection versus what Escambia County is.
Thank you. And I'll also note that there's a tourism sales indicator on there as well.
Yeah.
So there's two good measures of tourism health that are on the app,
Absolutely.
updated up to the minute. So
Great asset. Thank you.
thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Kim,
it.
for having us on the agenda.
I'd now like to call on Dr. Susan Stevenson to give us the operating budget summary for fiscal year 2012-13.
Thank you. I'll wait till they get it up on the screens. What you have before you is the budget to actual for the quarter ending June 30. All the funds are reported in the Board of Governors format. On the first 3 pages, you have the original budget, the modified budget, and the actual spending for the fiscal year. The following pages, 4 through 12, represent a budget to actual comparison for each fund. On page 4, you'll see that we received 100% of our general revenue and lottery cash from the state. We collected 111% of the proposed or estimated budget. This was tied to our enrollment growth. Auxiliary cash on page 5. Our auxiliary funds increased cash over the year by $2.4 million. I'm sorry, that's page 5. Right, okay. The technology fund, which is on page 11, is always of interest. We collected revenue of $1.5 million and spent $1.9 million. During the year, 11 systemic awards were awarded in February, and 10 ITEP awards were awarded in April. These funds have a time delay in as they spend out, so that's, some of those will flow over into the current year's budget. On the next page, you'll see page 12, the green fee. We collected $202,000. The projects were reviewed by committee and awarded this year, and awarded before the end of the year, but as you see, the funds won't be spent out until this current fiscal year. The life-to-date capital budget on page 14 shows that most of our projects, as you see, have been spent out, but the good news is the College of Business Center Phase 3 of 3 for fiscal year 13-14. It's not yet on that report. It'll show up on the next one. We received the appropriation amount of $8.4 million. The design services should begin this fall. We have authorization to encumber and begin spending that money. So the College of Business Phase 3 of 3 is well underway. As an overall review of the year's activity, as I always share with you, over 87.5% of the E&G spending was for salaried positions. That's an increase of 5.6% over the prior year. Our OCO spending was down and only accounted for 1.46% of our E&G spending. That's largely because of the change in the threshold for OCO. Now only items over $5,000 are recorded in that category. The expense items, there was an increase of $1 million over the prior year, or a 5% increase. Utilities, we're very proud of our efforts to achieve efficiencies. This was shared with the Finance and Facilities Committee. This year, utilities were actually, even though we added square footage to our campus, this year our utilities expense was down by over $372,000, representing a 3.7% of total spending. Slicing the pie another way, in higher education, we like to look at the spending by functional category. We often refer to these as the NACUBO categories. The direct instruction and academic support and student service areas all reported increases in spending over the prior year, while plant, institutional support, public service, and research all reported decreases. This, in keeping with the institution's commitment to the core mission, 71% of E&G expenses went for direct instruction and academic support. That's up from 57.8% in 2009 and a 60% in 2012. Direct instruction and academic support were areas where the areas of the largest dollar increase as well. Direct instruction was up $3.5 million, and academic support was up almost $1.6 million over the prior year. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Overall, the institution is in sound financial health, and we are, the evidence in the report shows that we are staying true to our commitment to enhance core areas.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson. Are there any questions for Dr. Stevenson? All right, thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Janice Gilley to give us a BP oil spill grant update, as well as the 2013-14 legislative priorities.
And I'd like to ask Dr. Harris and Dr. Podemski to join me. I'm going to have them help with questions. The up button pushes when I'm ready for the next one. Okay. The purpose of this presentation is to just kind of give you an overview and a basic understanding of the oil spill funds. There are many different pots. I think sometimes people think there's just a pot or there are just funds. And so I think when you see the presentation, you'll see that there's a lot more to it than just a pot. Some of the common terms that are used throughout oil spill funding discussions are CWA, which is Clean Water Act, OPA, which is the Oil Pollution Act. NRDA is it's the Natural Resource Damage Assessment. We have the Restore Act, which is the federal legislation from 2 years ago. It's the Resources and Ecosystem Sustainability, Tourist Opportunity, and Revived Economies of the Gulf States Act. And then we have NIFWF. NIFWF is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which is a set of funds out of another settlement. And then we also have the rules. When I mention rules, I'm talking about rules related to the Federal Department of Treasury. And then finally, the other thing are the way the funds are defined. There are fines, which are civil and criminal penalties. Fines, which are civil and criminal. Penalties, which are administrative. Plea agreements, which are civil and criminal. And then there's also funds. So there are a lot of different terms that are used in the vernacular when you talk about oil spills. So then the final thing that we typically use are pots or buckets. So you will hear people talk about there's 5 pots here and there's a bucket there or whatever. So sometimes I might use those terms interchangeably, so just help, raise your hand if I get too confusing, because it is very complicated. The other purpose is to give you an idea of what funds that may provide the best opportunity for you at UWF to qualify for, and then also to let you know about funding that UWF and our researchers have already qualified and received throughout some of the processes that are already underway. And so, this one? Okay, just go to the next. All right, so as you can see, this was one attempt by the Ocean Conservancy to try and take the oil spill and explain how the different funds are divided up across the state of Florida in particular. They've also done this for Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. And so looking at this, it's a bit complicated. And so I tried very hard to boil this down. And so what you have before you is my third attempt to try and make this a little bit easier to comprehend and kind of organize it in such a way that it provides a snapshot of each of the different funding pots that are available. So if you will go to the very first. All right, and Dr. Harris and Dr. Podimsky can certainly help me fill in the blanks if you have any specific questions. All right, so on the very first page, you have what you have on the left column, the Excel spreadsheet, page 1. You have the oil spill related program is your top line. Then you have the origin of the program. You have who is managing the program, what the eligible fund uses are, the potential amount of funds. In most instances, it's their potential. And then you have the availability of funds, when they'll come available, and then any projects that have been funded by UWF. So on the first column is specifically related to NRDA. And what I would like to mention about the NRDA funds is that is a process in which it is more compensatory versus punitive. And what I mean is that it's where BP is negotiating with the wildlife and environmental agencies and entities to determine what the loss of human use is, what the damage is to the ecosystems, the fisheries, and things like that. In that particular category of funding, the City of Pensacola, there was a $1 billion early restoration pot that was negotiated by those agencies with BP, which we've recently found out was much to the chagrin of the Department of Justice. But there was $100 million of that $1 billion dedicated specifically to Florida. And in that pot, there is a $20 million fish hatchery that the City of Pensacola is looking to get. UWF is working in in coordination with Fish and Wildlife and the City of Pensacola to try and fill out what that project should look like from an education and research perspective. And Dr. Huggins and Dr. Stewart and Matt Schwartz and a lot of our CEDB researchers are engaged in those conversations, as well as Dr. Benchley from the historical and archaeological standpoint. So that's one area. Now, the money is not coming to UWF, so I want to make that clear, but it is an opportunity for UWF to have a community engagement and also have an education research opportunity. The next pot is the one called the NIF, that's the Gulf Environment Benefits Fund, and that one has the NIFWIF funds that I mentioned. That one doesn't necessarily have as much of an opportunity for UWF to qualify for funds, mostly because it is specifically related to the restoration and remedy of harm to the natural resources. The last two on page one of them is the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative, and the last one is the Gulf Tourism and Seafood Promotion. On page 4 of the handout, you will see an actual full listing of all the projects that we've currently had funded. The majority of them to date have been funded out of this pot of money. This was a very early pot. It was in May 24th of 2010, just not too long after the oil spill happened and before it was capped. The BP committed $500 million. And in the state of Florida, FIO, the Florida Institute of Oceanography, that's based out of USF, is the entity that is managing that. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Wade Jeffrey from our faculty. He sits as the chairman of the FIO Advisory Council. So he's an integral part of making decisions and helping the state determine which projects are the right ones from the environmental perspective to be funded and researched. The last pot, and that particular pot, was a $200 million pot for tourism and seafood. That was paid for out of BP. That pot has closed. There will be no more funds in that pot. But West Florida Historic Preservation, Inc. did receive $500,000 from that particular pot for a first floor exhibit, which they're is currently underway and being constructed. Okay, if you'll go to page 2. Now, page 2, this is the one that you hear probably the most conversation about. It's the Restore Act. And these pots are called many different things across the conversations of oil spill funding. But what I did was I took the conversation that's being held at the Department of Treasury and how they've kind of called the pots and put them up here for the titles. These pots of money come from, you have the Clean Water Act that was passed in the 1970s, you have the Oil Pollution Act, which was passed in the 1990s, then you have the Restore Act, which was passed in 2011. Okay, so that's your line of order in terms of how the funding was started. The penalties and fines are mandated. They're specifically related to the protection and the conservation and the restoration of the the ecosystems and the environment that were damaged from the oil spill. So when the Restore Act was passed, what they did is they divided the 80% goes to what's called these 5 different pots. You have a local pot, which goes directly to your communities. In Florida, it was designated to go to 8 disproportionately impacted counties. In Louisiana, it goes to specific parishes. In Alabama, it goes to an entity, an Alabama restoration entity. The second pot are the council funds. The council is the Gulf Coast Restoration Council. That council is overseeing, for the most part, all of the restoration projects along the Gulf Coast. At some point or another, they have to look at the projects that are being presented and determine that they are fitting in that flow that I mentioned to you: Clean Water Act requirements, OPA requirements, Restore Act, and Department of Treasury rule requirements. Then you have the next pot is called the consortium pot. That pot in the state of Florida is handled by the 23 affected counties, and that's where you have the 8 impacted in the Panhandle, and then you have the next 15 along the coast of Florida. The fourth pot is called the Gulf Coast Ecosystem and Restoration Pot, and that one's specifically managed by NOAA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Of these 5 pots, that's the one that probably has the least, UWF will probably have the least impact on specifically. And then the final one is the Centers of Excellence. That is a pot of money that is going, again, once again, to be managed in the state of Florida through a consortium of DEP, Florida Institute of Oceanography, and Fish and Wildlife. So that's how these pots are specifically handled. The funding for these pots is going to come from the administrative penalties and fines, like I mentioned, and currently the guesstimation is anywhere from $4.5 billion to $17.5 billion for this particular total 80% pot of funding. In Escambia County, if you use our formula under the very first pot, Escambia County could potentially receive $10.6 million for each $1 billion of fines. And those fines are determined per barrel as $1,100 for kind of insignificant negligence on the part of the company, all the way up to $4,300 per barrel that is spilled for the BP company. In terms of where UWF probably has the best opportunity for projects on this particular list, the second pot, which is the council funds pot, that is the Gulf Coast Restoration Council. That would be the one where we would probably pursue large projects. One of the projects that we have currently envisioned is a research learning center, and so that would be a large project that would impact the coast in terms of environmental education and research, and so that would be one that we would probably go to the council for funding. The second pot would be the third pot, the consortium pot, would be one in which UWF would be probably successful in terms of creating collaborations with other counties along this Gulf region and presenting projects there. And then obviously the final pot, the Centers of Excellence pot, that is the one that Dr. Jeffrey, CEDB, and our researchers will be more heavily engaged in from that perspective. We are in terms of this page of funding, we are now in the phase in which the courts are trying to determine how much oil was actually spilt, because you have to know how much was actually spilt before you can determine the level of negligence and how much per barrel. And so that's the phase that we're in right now. And there is some speculation that it could be 2 to 5 years before this page of funding is available or has been determined. Now, I say that that's only if there isn't a settlement prior to that, like some of the other pots have been settled earlier, and so their funds have been made available. Are there any questions on that page?
Janice, quick question.
Uh-huh.
You said that they're doing the research on how much oil was spilled. Who is doing that right now?
Well, I understand that NOAA is particularly, they're the ones that are involved in that particular research. It's not necessarily our researchers. And I just will share with you, another part of that equation is how much is left. Because they are taking out the calculation as to how much is evaporated and how much is dispersed and not still there. That's
how much is sitting on the bottom of the ocean.
That's part of the calculation to determine the portion of negligence as well. So it's very complicated.
Jan,
Thank you.
where is the Institute of Oceanography located?
They are in conjunction with the University of South Florida. They are considered a state university system-wide resource, and so they are, when the university system puts forward their legislative budget request, they usually include them, like they do IHMC, as a center of excellence for the state of Florida. So while they're housed at USF, they are very supportive of all the universities in the state.
And who represents the Panhandle, Northwest Florida on the Fish and Wildlife Commission? Do you know?
Actually, we're lucky to have on the Fish and Wildlife Commission Brian Yablonsky, who's the Director of External Affairs for Gulf Power. They don't have regional representation, but Brian is originally from, worked for St. Joe in Panama City and now is in Tallahassee for us, but he does a really good job of representing our interests.
Mm-hmm. And I was thinking you meant U.S. fish, because
C.W. Roberts out of Panama City, Tallahassee,
Yep.
is also on FWC. I sit on, and I'm a voting member for the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, which is Gulf-wide.
U.S., yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was pointing at her, because I thought you knew that she was on that one. I was pointing at Trustee Dana, Trustee Terry. Anything else on that one? Okay, let's move to page 3. So on page 3, now we're moving. These are specifically related to the state of Florida. These two pots. The first pot is the IRIF, which is the one that OEDE oversees, and I'm going to ask Dr. Harris to go over with you some of the successes that we've had and the results that we've had as from that particular pot. That particular pot is specifically related to economic development and company retention, recruitment, retainment in our region, in the 8 disproportionately affected counties. And then the other pot, the Triumph Gulf Coast pot, that one is specifically related to our Attorney General's claims, criminal claims against BP, and damages related to our state from that perspective. The original application was about a $5.5 billion ask from the Attorney General. Obviously, there's anywhere from $2.5 billion to $5.5 billion are what the expectation is in terms of the resulting the result at the end of the case. But what I wanted to mention was, when this statute was passed this past year, it specifically noted that 75% of that $2.5 to $5 billion would come back to the 8 disproportionately affected counties, which are between Pensacola and Gulf Franklin counties. And I've put in here the eligible funds and uses, and specifically in here it does mention that education programs, education and training, and things that are related to diversification of the economy for the region are in there. But it does specifically mention that institutions with a home campus in this disproportionately affected counties would have an opportunity to get those grants at the table first. And I think that was very important, and I do hope that if you get the opportunity to thank our legislative delegation for that foresight, this pot is to be a 30-year pot, and it's to diminish over 30 years. The principal balance is to diminish over 30 years. But to me, this pot does provide one of the greatest opportunities for UWF to have a very lasting impact from the oil spill, from an education perspective, from a research perspective, and just from an economic development perspective as to what we can contribute to our community. It is estimated that it could be 3 to 5 years before this pot is available, or unless, like I've said before, a settlement is reached between BP and our folks. So I'm going to let Dr. Harris tell you a little bit about the successes from the IRIF and what we've been able to accomplish with those funds. And then I want Dr. Podemski to just kind of, the very last page goes over the proposals that we've had funded, but I'd like him to also mention to you how many proposals we've actually presented and have or have not been funded.
Hey, excuse me, can I make one comment before you completely leave and go to the other part? Is that several members of the UWF faculty have made presentations, and staff have made presentations to the Escambia Restore Committee, and I just want to thank, they've all been excellent, from Dr. Kelly to Dr. Harris, and several, Dr. Snyder, several of the environmental professors have as well, and UWF's involvement in that process has been very well received, and they have represented the university extremely well. So I just want to thank them publicly for their participation, as well as the level of intellect and professionalism that they've shown when they've come before the committee.
And for everybody's benefit, Bentina is the chairperson of the Escambia County Restore Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the opportunity to give you a brief update on the oil spill recovery program and the successes that we have had thus far. And I will move through this very quickly, but I'm happy, as Janice noted, to answer any questions that you may have. As Janice has already alluded, we have a 3-year, $30 million program that we have just entered into the 3rd and final year of that program. The funds are actually brought down to the university via an invoice process, and so those dollars do not immediately come to the university at the outset of each fiscal year. And so through that invoicing process over the last just over 2 years now, we have managed to obligate $22,299,000 of the 30 million that is available to us. Of those, that 22.3 million that we have brought down from Tallahassee, we have allocated $6.7 million to projects via performance-based funding agreements. We have another $14 million that are in the House presently that we are in the process of negotiating performance-based funding agreements with the recipients. To date, we have announced 7 projects, 1 in Santa Rosa County, 3 in Escambia, 2 in Walton, and 1 in Bay County. And of course, I could provide you with the information on those recipients, but collectively, we have contracts now in place that will yield a total of 2,617 net new private sector sustainable jobs throughout the region, and that comes at an average program cost of just over $2,500 per job. And to give you some perspective on that, when we started out this program back in 2011, we kind of set a goal of having 3,000 jobs created over the course of the lifetime of the program at an average cost of about $10,000 per job. So I'm happy to report that we are making excessive progress toward those ends. In addition, the collective projects are also estimated to yield a total of 5,725 indirect and induced jobs throughout the region. So those jobs are the ones that are either more temporary in nature, such as through construction, or that are further down the supply chain pipeline. But we're very proud of that fact. And total, we have commitments in excess of $190 million in net new private sector capital investment that will be associated with these projects. Again, we have a number of projects that are currently in the hopper. We anticipate some announcements to be forthcoming very soon, and I think that you'll be very pleased as we continue down this pathway. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Janice or Dr. Podemski, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
If you can go back to 2010 during the oil spill, you'll remember that some of our faculty from the Center for Environmental Diagnostics and Bioremediation were right out there in the forefront. They were providing oil spill analysis. They were talking to the media. They were helping the public to understand the impacts of what was happening, and many times to calm panic. And since that time, our faculty have been very actively involved in pursuing grants, but continuing their own research, whether it is funded or not. Janice prepared an additional slide for you, a spreadsheet that shows funded projects that total, including the fund that Dr. Harris just mentioned, over $34 million in funded research that the university has been able to garner. Much of this is partnerships between our faculty and faculty across the Southeast and the nation, where teams of researchers have gotten together to explore very complex issues associated with not only the oil spill, but the impacts of the oil spill. In addition to the funded projects that you have a list of, we submitted 39 proposals to various funding agencies, totaling an additional $16 million that were not funded, but are still on the table for potential consideration. The Florida Institute of Oceanography that was mentioned earlier has been designated through Senator Nelson as the Florida Center for Excellence, and it will continue to receive funds to support Florida research. And our faculty will be in the forefront of applying for those, continuing some of the research that they have ongoing and exploring new opportunities as well. If you look at the list, the last thing I'd like to mention is the scope and breadth of the type of research that we are involved in. It has to do with the impact of oil itself, dispersion, oil quality, sediment, things of that nature, but also related areas of research such as health impacts, economic impact, environmental impact, archaeological research, estuaries and watershed that feed into the Gulf, fish and other aspects of marine life that are in the Gulf. Our faculty have broad-ranged expertise, and this is our backyard. We know this backyard. We have a long history of data related to all aspects of the Gulf, watersheds that feed into the Gulf, environmental aspects, et cetera. So we are well positioned to continue the research, not only UWF itself, but in partnerships. We have strong collaborations with other faculty, often who, from other universities who take the lead, but then work with us because we're here to help collect data, to monitor. We bring, and one last thing, we bring students to this research. Undergraduate and graduate students are actively involved in almost all of the projects that are listed on the spreadsheet that you have. And for that, I'm very grateful because it doesn't happen at major universities, but it does here at the University of West Florida.
Okay, so with that, if you have any questions, we're still available. If you don't, I just want to let you know that we are monitoring all of these buckets of money, and where they're coming from, and the provost has been very good to engage and try and make sure that we have the right faculty in place as these pots come through for the right research and the right programs that we think we'll qualify for. So thank you for your attention. You didn't fall asleep. I didn't have an app. But question, yes, sir.
The Treasury regulations will govern the Restore Act funds. 2 weeks ago, the word on the street was they were imminent. Have you heard any
Yes,
update?
I've actually read them 3 times. The Treasury rules came out. They were supposed to be out 180 days after it passed, and then they gave them until January of 2012. They came out just 2 weeks ago. And specifically, here's what they're to do. They're to oversee the auditing requirements. They're to make sure that they provide the procedures for which the programs and activities are carried out. And then the third thing is they provide the procedures for the allocation and identification of the funds for the specific administrative costs related to the project. I will tell you that I was expecting this great big genie out of a bottle because we've been hearing about the Treasury rules so much, and Dr. Harris has read them as well. I did not find anything in particular in there that was prohibitive from some of the projects and some of the reports that we've already read, like the Gulf Coast Restoration Council and things like that. What is very clear, though, is that Treasury will be keeping an eye, much like they did on stimulus and other things, to make sure that when you get funds, you've used them the way they have envisioned them to be used through the Clean Water Act. And then, so it goes Clean Water Act, OPA, Restore the Gulf Coast Restoration Council, and then whoever gets the funding after that. And so you have several layers to make sure that you have accountability too. And that's the main thing that they're providing from what I can see. Was there anything else in particular?
No, I think the only thing that may be worth adding to that is the fact that these dollars, you can understand that they are going to be going to the federal government first before they are actually dispersed to the states and the local governments. And so they're going to be dispersing these funds in the form of grants, and so these will be considered federal actions as they are disseminating the money. And so with that comes all of the strings that Janice was just alluding to that we saw, for example, during the stimulus money.
Mm-hmm. Now, there is, I think, maybe just one differentiation, and that's the piece that Trustee Terry is over in the local. The funds will still have the strings from the federal government side, but they are a little bit less stringent on the local pot than they are on the other pots. They are giving them a little bit more authority to make total decision-making on those particular pieces of money.
Are there any other questions? All right, Dr. Harris, Dr. Dembski, we appreciate what you're doing, finding the grant money and managing the research, and Dr. Harris spending the money that we've got.
He'd like to spend it quicker if you have some more ideas. Okay, now if we can go back to the PowerPoint, I'll go, if you want me to go over the legislative? Yeah, that one. It'll be the third one. Okay, so we're getting ready for legislative session this next year. I will tell you from a state perspective, the money is looking better than it has over the past several years. And Of course, the legislators like to tell us don't spend it all. They would like to give tax cuts, and they would also like to put some more in reserves. And so, given that parameter, we would like wish lists to be really long, but they're trying to keep those wish lists kind of short. And then on the federal level, I'm sure many of you have been noticing that the continuing resolution that's being presented obviously has a lot of strings concerning Obamacare from the House perspective, and the Senate is obviously saying that's really a non-starter with them. From our university perspective, the areas that impact us obviously are the NIH grants and different grants that we have when they do holdbacks on the federal level, and then also with veterans, tuition and things like that for our students in that area, and then also Pell Grants. So we keep an eye on those particular areas when it comes to the federal level. So I'd say that's my state and federal report at this point. As far as our legislative agenda for 2014-15, we have several continuation projects from last year. We did have a very good year in terms of programs that were funded, and it's very important that we maintain the recurring funding that we received for those. They're listed there for you. Then the other thing that's been mentioned is that it is the final year of our $10 million oil spill recovery grant program. And we may need a little bit of language statutorily to make sure that we are able to fully utilize the third year of funding and make sure it gets expended. I know Dr. Harris is very keen on that. Triumph Gulf Coast, Inc., that was one of the pots of money that I mentioned to you previously. We will just continue to monitor that particular statute and make sure that there aren't major changes to that statute that could impact our ability as the home campus or the different types of projects that can be funded so they don't adversely impact the university. The fourth bullet, we are going to continue to support and the enhanced public-private partnership construction language. I mentioned this a year ago that when the president sat on the facilities task force, we knew that that could be a 3 to 5 year process in terms of warming the legislature and the governor up to some of the major policy initiatives that we were presenting. And so this is year 2 of our attempt on public-private partnerships, construction language, and things like that. I think where the benefit comes in this particular year is that the construction industry, the architects, the engineers, all of those entities really understand that it's very important that universities continue to have the opportunity to renovate and remodel facilities and also have new construction. And so they're going to be joining, I think, very soon this particular effort and actually promoting it themselves. So we're very thankful for that. Also, there have been a lot of conversations on the Capital Improvement Trust Fund bonding, and we are wanting to be very supportive of our student government representatives. They have really taken, for lack of a better term, the bull by the horns on this one. For the students to be continually lobbying and promoting the Capital Improvement Trust Fund and the bonding of those projects has just been, it's been really wonderful to see that and them take that particular type of leadership on that particular type of program. And I didn't know if Chris had anything he'd like to add in regard to that. But the student government representatives have been wonderful all across the state in that regard. And then the last continuation or monitoring issue that I would mention is the performance-based funding models. That is an issue where right now the Board of Governors has put out a performance-based funding model. There is some concern among some of the universities that there might be an effort to codify that statutorily. And obviously you can see how there could be danger in codifying something that, that you aren't quite sure exactly how it needs to be implemented. And I'll just give you one particular element of those of the funding model that's concerning to us. And President Bentz had the opportunity to bring it up at the Board of Governors last week. The metric that gives us a little bit of heartburn, there is a metric that does say is employed after graduation. And when it was previously brought up in the legislature, it did say in Florida. We were fortunate enough to be able to get the in Florida removed, but now where the data has a problem is that there are not a lot of states that keep track of the data as well as Florida as to where their graduates go and where they're employed after graduation. So for UWF perspective, on any given semester, we have about 400 Alabama students 11 miles away from the gate of our campus. And so those folks, they're going back home and they're being employed in Alabama. Alabama does not have the data system to be able to report those employed graduates back to the state of Florida at this time. I will just share with you that University of Florida has a big concern in this regard because a lot of their graduates go back to New York. They're from New York, they're out-of-state students, they go back to New York and other Northeast states. They do not have that data. So there's some concern about codifying some of the performance-based funding metrics. Another part for us is the military. We have such a huge military-related student population that's very transient and mobile. It's also very hard to track them as well. So I'll just mention that the performance-based funding, while we are not afraid to be the president has, in my time here, has not been afraid to be measured. Where her concern comes in is when they put measurements on us that they can't really collect the data to determine. So that's that one. Okay, the next one. And then so on new initiatives, new issues for 2014-15, we would like to pursue $4.5 million in program enhancements for high-demand regional workforce degrees in STEM. We've got in engineering and in healthcare. So in engineering, it would potentially be a mechanical engineering. In healthcare, it would be potentially like a physician's assistance type program, as well as specific programs that are deemed by the provost programs of excellence in which she would like to kind of enhance those programs. One of the initiatives that's been mentioned is in the area of public history. There is a potential for a farmstead, a learning laboratory in that regard. The second one is the Complete Florida program, and that's our adult degree completion program where UWF is the lead for the state. We received last year $2 million in recurring, $2 million in non-recurring. We would like to have the second $2 million that's in non-recurring become recurring. We have already gone through the process that the Board of Governors has put in place, and we submitted a legislative budget request to them to consider that as part of their legislative budget request, and they are, while they did not take it up as a specific board legislative budget request because they stuck to system issues, and they did the FIO and they did IHMC as the two centers of excellence, they are submitting it as one of the legislative budget requests from the universities to the legislature. There's also an opportunity for us to support statewide funding for the Haas Center. One of the areas is the Economic Security Report that's done annually by the state to determine how our students are doing whenever they graduate and what jobs they're getting after graduation. We will also be pursuing funding for the Allied Health Sciences facility. That's the facility in which we're envisioning our DMP program, our USF DPT program, FSU Medical School, and the Department of Health and the FDLE Crime Lab, where they would all be co-located in one place. And then the last one is, as you know, there have been several conversations about the communities in the Panhandle are joining together for aerospace recruitment, specifically related to Airbus and their suppliers. And so we would certainly want to support that initiative as it relates to recruitment and education, specifically in Northwest Florida. So do you have any questions?
The Allied Sciences Health Facility, with the challenges of PICO, what are the prospects on that?
Well, I will say, that's twofold. We have the situation where we have Building 58 on campus, which already houses our wet labs and biology and those types of programs, and it has a great need for renovation and remodeling. It was the one project that the Board of Governors chose as our #1 project for remodeling and renovation this year, and they put in about $12 million for that. I think it's actually like a $22 million renovation, but they put in 12. I think that looks really good, to be honest with you, because it's a renovation and remodeling. I think the governor likes that. The new facility, new funding for that facility will be a little bit harder to achieve, but I can't say it's completely outside the realm of possibility, and I'll give you a reason. Because of some of the changes in Bright Futures this next year, I think there's going to be more lottery funds available, and so I think the universities should definitely pursue that as one of our sources of funds, as a new funding source for facilities, and then also the second one is potentially the internet tax. If it gets imposed, that could potentially be another new source of cash, because what you want to do is you want to try and do a project that's going to, with this governor, that's going to be funded with cash versus a bonding situation at this point. we're still twisting that arm. So I think there's several different ways that we could achieve that project. We just depends on which pot gets funded first.
Any other questions for Janice?
Janice, on the public-private legislative changes you need to facilitate that process, is there direct opposition, or is it just a matter of working through the process? Is there anyone coming out against that concept?
Yeah, I think, well, it's not so much the concept as how the funds are handled. If we were doing public-private partnerships where all of the capital is being put up by, let's say, a public-private corporation, and then what we do is we pay a lease fee back to that corporation, I think we're fine. Where the concern comes in is when we are bonding the funding sources and we have to go through the state for approval for the bonding. And that's where we kind of seem to be meeting a little bit of a rub with some of the legislative leadership and the governor at this point. So to the extent that we can have statutory language that provides us as much flexibility as possible to use as many sources of funds as possible for a true public-private partnership, that'll be wonderful. When we start adding bonding in, we get a little sideways.
Concern over bonding of
Yes, sir.
general funds.
Mm-hmm. But I will tell you there is good news on that front. One of our board of governors members, Governor Morton, is actually, his day job is a bond. He works with a bond corporation. Now he's on the buying side. And so I had the opportunity to spend about 30 minutes with him at the last Board of Governors meeting, and I explained to him some of our situations, and he's very familiar. He buys all the Georgia bonds, university bonds, and all the North Carolina university bonds that he can buy because he knows how stable they are. And so the good news is I've provided him with a lot of information, try not to overwhelm him too much, but provide him with considerable amounts of information about how all the other states handle their higher education financing and bonding so that he can continue to lobby. He actually lives in the neighborhood with the governor down in Fort Myers, so he's probably going to go to dinner with him or something. But he is really interested in trying to help us resolve this bonding conflict that we seem to have right now. And he's coming from the buyer's perspective, which is a perspective that I don't really think we've had presented to this point.
Any other questions for Jan? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very informative. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Martha Saunders for academic affairs update.
Thank you. Much of the academic affairs news was subsumed in the President's report, but I do have 3 points I'd like to make. One, compliments to Joffrey Gaiman and her talented staff on our enrollment in the fall. We managed to sustain last year's record enrollment while also increasing SAT scores from 909, average score from 998 last fall to 1028 this fall. We increased ACT scores by almost 1 point, and high school GPA of our new admits from an average of 3.41 last fall to 3.52 this fall. So we've got a lot of students, and they're getting smarter every day. We also, we don't often talk about our international enrollment, but I did want to note that we have a substantial increase of international students this year. We have 582 students from 98 different countries. And when we focus on diversity, I think that's an important point, that our students are learning about lots of different ways of living and lots of different backgrounds, and so it really has added a great deal to the texture of the student body. We are in the midst of conversations about reorganization. Dean Bob Dugan is ably handling campus dialogues. The last time we reorganized academic affairs was 1999. That resulted in the 3 colleges that we have now. And we were a very different place then. We had about 8,500 students. We had no online programs. We were about 8% minority enrollment, and maybe 900 beds compared to the 2,000 now. So we are very different. This is a result of sort of the next step of academic visioning. And the goal is to certainly to energize academic affairs. We're looking toward operational efficiency, financial stability, external impact, natural alliances, and increased visibility. So right now, we're just engaged in some very serious dialogues. I hope to have a plan in December, and then once we have a more or less a master plan for academic affairs, we'll line it up with our resources, and then we'll engage and move to the next level. Finally, just you will expect to hear a lot of conversation about high-impact learning and high-impact experiences. We kicked off the year with the Fall Faculty Forum with substantial presentations on high-impact learning, and that's the kind of experience that make all the difference for a student. It can include internships, co-ops, undergraduate research, learning communities, a number of experiences that really distinguish them in the workplace. It's the resume boost, it's the little extra, the competition teams that our students engage in. And so we're going to be intently focusing on increasing high-impact learning experiences for our students, and that's going to be very much a part of this year's conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let's move on to some of our action items. The first is our presidential evaluation. We had the opportunity to evaluate the president's performance for this past year, 2012-13. All of you received the results of the evaluation in your packet. I would say that the president's performance was an A- to a B+. I do have a comment about that. There are items that we measure our president's performance that are well beyond her ability to control because of decision-making well outside of the walls of this university. So I do feel that the score that she achieved was well above what I would have expected because she did so well on the things that she does control. But I'd like to now open it up for discussion about the presidential performance. Are there any comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think, aren't we, as a natural step of looking at these evaluation results, at a point of talking about a determination of a bonus or increase in base pay?
Well, we will move to that next.
That's not in this
That's
subject
not-
discussion
not-
here?
Not right now. This
Okay.
is the next item that we'll discuss. All right, well, hearing no discussion, we'll move on. President Ben's contract calls for an annual discussion on her compensation. And I've asked Kim Brown to provide us with the pay and bonuses of the rest of the SUS system presidents. President Ben's compensation package is 9th of the 12 in the system. She is above FAMU and New College. 7 of the 11 presidents received bonuses this past year. I've also discussed with Dr. Kelly if there is funding available through the foundation for a presidential bonus or a base increase. He reported there is $44,250 available as well as $14,750 that could be used for base salary. The 44,250 is a 15% of her base salary. So at this point, would ask for the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman? As you look through these evaluation results, and you commented it's a A- or a B+, there appear to be more A's than B's. There's a little C once in a while, but if you tried to get a university GPA on a 4.0 scale, it's probably a 3.5, just eyeballing what these results show. Forgive me for the mathematician in me, but a 3.5 is 87.5% of a 4.0, or 88% of getting where you would be a perfect score on the results here. And so my thoughts were something along that percentage of the potential bonus to be awarded. I would round that off to 39,000. I've done a little math calculation. And on the base pay, given where she stacks in the ladder of where we are in our state, with the foundation offering that 14,000 is available for an increase in her base, I would move that, I would suggest that we consider a motion to approve allotting her that full allotment of the 14,000 in her base pay increase.
Thank you.
Can we talk about where else the 44,000 or the 14,000 could be applied, or is there other various pots that could go towards besides Dr. Bent's?
I didn't understand you, I'm sorry.
The 44,000 you talked about, Dr. Kelly, mentioning that the funding was available. Is there any other allocation resources that could go to in particular?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that money could be used for within the foundation. The foundation historically has looked at the available funds for this purpose, and they've tried to address it as a, first of all, as a 15% bonus up, because if this board were to decide that we should give a 15% bonus and the money is not allocated for it, then we're in conflict with the foundation, and they are charged with the responsibility for providing that. The state only provides a base amount for the base salary, and the foundation has provided historically, and in all of the universities, I think you'll find that all of the universities have provided the additional income for not only the base salary, but also bonuses for their presidents. So it's following tradition. It's up to the individual boards to make decisions whether they want to give any salary or base increase, whether or not they want to give a bonus, or whether they don't want to do that. They can always turn that money back into the foundation for the future.
Mr. Chair, can I go ahead and second the motion so we can have further discussion on that topic? I think there was a motion on the floor.
I don't think there was a motion.
Okay.
But
Mr. Chairman?
let me have a discussion first. Gary? Let me recognize.
I was prepared to make a motion.
Trustee Jones?
Well, I just want to say that I'm really in favor of reasonable and fair compensation for the president. And I think that I'm one of the folks who I think gave a good report card. But I also see that, you know, we are in sort of a reorganization building process. And sometimes I think if we hit ceilings, then that we have nowhere else to go. I also don't really think that we need to be in a situation where we sort of say, you know, hey, our president makes more than yours, or you know, competing with other universities as far as presidential compensation. So I would really like us to look at perhaps a permanent increase, a little bit more in line with what we're providing to our faculty and our staff, perhaps in the 3% range. And looking at bonus, you know, we ought to look more at how much did things exceed our expectations this year. And I think they did in a number of areas. But I think we have a long way to go. And I really, you know, think that we maybe ought to look a little less than maximum. And I appreciate the opportunity to say that before a motion's made, because it's very difficult to deal with that afterwards. But I think we, in the permanent compensation, I personally think we ought to be somewhere in around like 3% range. That just is there. It's there forever, and thank you.
Thank you. There are other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Dana?
Thank you, Chairman Bear. The only area that I would differ with you on, Bob, is that this university is in competition with other universities. And it's, in my mind, it's a good thing to look at the comparables of where presidential or, you know, senior leadership, where their compensation lies. Because we're fortunate that we have Dr. Bentz, who is doing a fine job in my mind, but also that she is willing to perhaps take sacrifices in compensation compared to her peers because she loves this university and this community. But one day, if she were no longer here, and we are recruiting out there for the best to lead up the university, then we will be competing again with other universities and their pay scale. So I just would hope people, trustees, consider that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you know, I took a serious evaluation look at Judy's performance, and while we can base her pay on the competition of the other universities, we also have to look at her performance and her vision. She has, from our predecessor, where we were the little university in the woods, on what we're doing with BEI and some of the other projects and how far we've come, you know, the performance actually outweighs the competition of what we're doing. The other universities in the system are nowhere near on the map of doing the things that we are doing. And the ones that did it had the financial support of the state university systems. So in my personal evaluation, you know, looking at her being number 9, she needs to be higher because the performance is there. I mean, all of us in the last couple of years have seen the leaps and bounds of Judy's leadership and her ability to bring the community together. In fact, I was at the football founders meeting the other day, and I was surprised at how many people showed up that are willing to participate and be a part of the university. That's performance, that's leadership. And so, you know, please, when you consider her increase, she is at number 9 in the system. But I think if you look at Florida as a whole, this is the only corner of the state that is making the noise in progress. You know, whether we progress slow or fast is all in the details. As they say, the devil is in the details. But there's a lot of progress going on. And jumping back to BEI, I'm serving on it. I've been there 2 years. It is a lot of work. I commend the staff for what they do to try to keep us in line, to try to keep everything in checks and balance. It is a very, very difficult job. I can sit here and say it's easy, but it's not, because I've been on the board itself. And Suzanne, I think you know what we go through on the BEI board to try to get these projects off the ground and try to deal with the public relations. So I base my decision based on the performance and not just the regular university and what the rest of them are doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Garrett?
Are you prepared for a motion?
I had a question,
Are
Chair.
there other
Comment.
comments or questions?
I was just, I think when we have these conversations, it's important to also look at that matrix in terms of the compensation packages that are typically offered a president of the university include far more than our president takes. Our president does not look for spousal travel support. Our president does not have a residence in which we are supporting that residence both on a full-time basis as well as an ongoing facility management basis. And I think when you factor in all of the types of packages that are out there for university presidents, I think it absolutely, and her performance over the year, I think it absolutely warrants that you are at the upper edge of her increasing her base salary for the year. And you said your math was 80%, and you're much better at math than me because I came up with 75% when I looked at how would you structure a bonus around her performance. So I think we're all probably fairly close in how we're looking at this.
Are there other comments?
Mr. Chair, just wanted to add that Dr. Benson, this is my first year, so I wasn't here when she was the previous year, but some of the direction in which she's taking, I will say I appreciate what she has addressed as far as especially as retention and the program she's put together to add more inclusion and diversity on campus. But I also want to consider our trustee, Robert Jones. If I'm a teacher and I enter a climate in South Florida, I potentially can come in at a higher rate than Escambia County just because of the dynamics and the economics of that area. And so I just think as we make the decision, and I believe in increase, I believe in giving someone what they're properly earned and deserve, but we also have to look at a precedent and the morale of the campus and the area when you begin to make these type of decisions at a max percentage. And so I do concur with Mr. Jones. I do agree with the rest of the board members that she has done an impeccable job. But when you look at a county that has some of the lowest economic salaries around in the entire state of Florida, we have to consider the morale of the faculty, the staff, and the other workers on campus and across the county. And so I do believe that she deserves something, but I do hope that we consider the precedent and the morale of those who will have to continue to support her on this campus as well as the students. So just didn't want Mr. Jones to feel like he was out there by himself, because I understand not just the climate of the president's office, but on campus, being that I was an employee here for 7 years. And so I just wanted to add that comment for consideration.
Thank you, Reverend May. Richard?
Chairman, I appreciate the comments of the other trustees, and on the Timothy's point, as we get there, Dr. Bentz, of course, many of us have known her for many years, and of course, as Dr. Bentz, as a professor and an academic, and where we go, I look down through all of everything we've read, and I certainly looked at in preparing for this first Board of Trustees meeting, and my familiarity with different areas here. But as we're talking about where we sit in the state and what it is that we're doing, I don't want to lose sight of the fact of the discussion about faculty in that same way. For the business standpoint, if we're building widgets, you can build widgets in South Florida, Orlando, and hopefully they're great widgets, and hopefully that's what we're turning out here. And in that point about competing and making sure we're turning out the best and we're giving the best, that element of faculty remains there. I had the discussion with Dr. Bentz earlier this week in the briefing, and this was the one issue I pulled out and talked to her about and said that you know, as much as we have to know as trustees about every aspect of this university and all the great things we are doing and moving ahead in comparison to other places in the state, and so many of us who choose to be here, and that's a reminder, I've said that at 2 convocation speeches that I've given now, as we appreciate that students choose to be here. and that the faculty choose to be here too, because frankly, the vast majority of us could be working pretty much anywhere. And, you know, that's just that reminder as we talk about Judy's salary and bonuses. That bonus amount exceeds the salary of many of our faculty, just the bonus amount. I just want to keep that forefront. Thank you.
Are there other comments?
I guess I would just dovetail on comments made by Trustee Patel and Trustee Dana. I do believe that the performance is absolutely there because she's taken on some long-term vision issues. It would be easy to fall back on. I gave her a very good report card, but still had some critical comments. But there wasn't a single initiative that I didn't see the seeds planted for accomplishing the long-term vision. So even when an annual or a particular statistic or metric was missed, the plan and the vision was in place to get to where we need to be. So performance in my mind is stellar. I do believe, as Trustee Dana said, that if we were to go out in the open market and recruit, that we're going to have to spend more. For someone to come in and rally the community and extend the long-term vision such as she has, I think it would end up costing us more. So I would want to keep that in mind as we make this decision.
Are there any other further comments? There seems to be a difference in what direction that we should take in this regard. So what I'd like to do is to raise a flag, see who salutes, and if not enough salute, we'll move to the next one. But I'd like to begin with our first commentator, and that was Mortal Sullivan, and let him offer his motion that he first made.
I would move that we utilize the funding offered from the foundation and to increase President Bentz's base salary by the $14,750 amount that has been offered by the foundation, and to offer a $39,000 bonus.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. The motion carries.
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure.
Can I do that?
Sure.
I'm listening to the discussion, and before the motion, which is almost exactly what I had in mind, there are a couple threads that came out, and I am not happy about being hemmed in, and I feel like we're hemmed in. Dr. Dana hit it, a couple of others hit on the topic. I don't like where we are on the chart with respect to the other state universities. There are two reasons for that I don't like it. One has to do with the personality of Judy Benz, her performance, and expectations. I expect a lot more than a normal performance. If we would just had a normal performing president, whatever that is, I wouldn't be happy. I expect a lot more. We need to move up that chart. That's number one reason, is the personality. But number two is an institutional thing, and I think Pam touched on this a while ago. We have got to be more competitive. We are what we do. Dr. Benz is trying to get us from being a backwoods regional university of West Florida. I am proud of that. I'm proud of that initiative. I'm proud of this board trying to move in that direction, but we have got to move in that direction in a number of respects. And when I sit down and review this situation and what we're offered, we're hemmed in by contract provisions that limit raises or bonus considerations. We're hemmed in by foundation money that's available and this, that, and the other. And I would like to see somebody on the board commissioned to take a look at that hemming in, if you will, and see if we can't open that so that we have the latitude to afford greater discretion next year or in future years. I am not pleased with being third from the bottom of the list. I understand
We are not the University of Florida Gainesville. There's a world of difference. But we are the University of West Florida. And we've got a great shop going, and we've got a great lady leading the shop. I'd like to see that visit.
Thank you, Garrett. I haven't shared with you one of the conversations that I had. I had a conversation with the chancellor, and it was like all conversations with the chancellor. It was lengthy, but he referenced the position that Judy plays on a statewide basis and the respect that she has from all of the other university presidents. He talked a lot about her participation with the Board of Governors and their respect for her. He said of all the presidents in this system that he has more respect for Judy Benz than any of the rest, and that's saying a lot there. I've had the great opportunity of meeting most of those presidents. I'm impressed by them. I'm not easily impressed, but I am impressed by our presidents of our university system. And I'm very proud of the report that I got from the chancellor. Having said that, I also appreciate the comments that others have made. Certainly Bob Jones, who's had the opportunity to serve on this board for several years now, and also has been involved for a number of years in the what used to be the junior college system, now the state college system. And he comes to us with knowledge, and I respect that. I also respect Timothy May, Trustee May, and his comments. Trustee May has been a part of this university, not only as a student, but as an employee of the university. And in this community, he has a very high standing and is respected by the majority of this community, and I certainly have great respect for him. He's an educator as well as a preacher. I prefer the preacher side of him than the educator side because it's always about raising money. But I do appreciate all of the comments that were made. Dr. Huff, I certainly appreciate yours. Trustee Hill, I appreciate your question. And, I want to thank you for the support that you offer our president, because it's support that we also offer our university. It's a great university. We're going places, and I'm very proud to be able to serve as the chair because of what you folks do and you folks do. So thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Chair, before you move on, you do need a motion to adopt the presidential evaluation, delegating authority to you to be able to submit that to the Board of Governors.
Great. So we now need a motion to adopt the president's evaluation for 2012-13 and delegate myself, the chair, to submit an evaluation summary to the Board of Governors.
So move.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right. Next, I'd like to call on Brendan Kelly to discuss memorandum of understanding with the United Faculty of Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a memorandum of understanding that the UWF has signed with UFF that is being presented for your approval, and I will take you through 4 key components in that memorandum of understanding. As we've engaged in collective bargaining with the UFF, we are at the point where we are ready to bargain a full book agreement. we're at the end of the 2010 to 2013 agreement, which means every word in the contract is now up for negotiation. We started that process a number of weeks ago, and as a result of that early full book bargaining process, we have signed a memorandum of understanding that agrees to extend the terms of the current contract for 1 year through June 30th, 2014. This is a benefit because 2013 is almost over. And this gives us an opportunity to take the contract that we have, live by it for 1 more year, and then engage in full book bargaining throughout that period of time. Additionally, the state had distributed increases or designated increases for state employees, $1,400 for those earning less than $40,000 a year, and $1,000 increases for those earning more than $40,000 a year, which are scheduled to be distributed on October 1st. Had we not entered into an agreement, then those would remain in limbo for in-unit faculty. And this memorandum of understanding makes certain that that money is delivered on October 1st as scheduled. Third, the legislature had outlined a $600 bonus structure for eligible permanent employees, or 35% of eligible permanent employees, to be distributed on July 1st, 2014. This memorandum of understanding outlines the process through which that would be distributed. First, it does designate that 35% of in-unit faculty, those that are covered by the collective bargaining agreement, would receive $600 bonus. Second, the criteria through which that will be distributed is left for the deans of the colleges to determine. And finally, we had included a $500 non-recurring wage action or a $500 bonus to be distributed on the first full pay period in December to all in-unit faculty. Those are the 4 key components of this memorandum of understanding. Any questions, concerns?
Other questions from Dr. Kelly? All right, thank you. At this point, could I have a motion to approve the action?
So moved. Second.
Those in favor of the memorandum signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right. I'd like to call on Anita Schoenberger now to present the memorandum of understanding with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 2201. Anita?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk to you about AFSCME. AFSCME is the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. That is a union that has been certified to represent some of the employees at this university. At the present time, there are 89 employees covered by the AFSCME union. The employees do jobs such as maintenance, trade work, custodial services, and work on our utilities. We have been negotiating with AFSCME, just like the UFF, for a full book, and the legislative increases have been passed, and we negotiated with the union so that they could get both increases, the increase in the bonus, before we concluded negotiations on the full book, because often that takes quite a bit of time. We negotiated with them for the $1,000 and the $1,400 in the same way that you heard described about the UFF. And in terms of the $600 bonus, the members of AFSCME have agreed to be included along with all the other university workforce employees. University workforce employees are those who are not in-unit faculty. In terms of receiving the $600 bonus, in terms of computing who makes up the 35% of the workforce. The AFSCME members have bargained for a position on the staff team that made up the decisions regarding the distribution of the $600 bonus. We ask you today to ratify the agreement that we entered into, which is attached in your supporting materials. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, the chair will entertain a motion to ratify the memorandum of understanding.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Passes. Thank you. All right, Dottie Meunier, University West Florida Metric for Performance Funding.
Good morning. I'll try to keep this short. In its 2014-2015 legislative budget request for the state university system, the Florida Board of Governors is proposing a request for $50 million in recurring funds for performance-based funding. If you look at page 81 of your agenda, you'll see the information regarding the board's proposed funding, performance-based funding model as far as the distribution is concerned if the system receives these funds. The board has pointed out that they were guided by 4 principles as they put together this distribution model. One is they wanted to make sure that they chose metrics that aligned with the state university system's strategic plan. They wanted to make sure that we could be rewarded on either excellence or improvement, and I'll go into a little more detail about that in a moment, that we would have a few clear, simple metrics, and that the model would recognize the unique missions of the individual institutions within the system. The proposed distribution model will include the 3 criteria that are in this year's performance-based funding that was funded by the legislature. We heard mention of one earlier, the employment metric or continuing education. Certainly, the median salaries of our undergraduate completers, as well as the cost for our undergraduate degree. If you scan the list at the top for the performance funding model, you'll see an additional 7 metrics that are pretty much our usual suspects relative to graduation rates and retention and activity in STEM and other areas of strategic emphasis, and so on. As I mentioned, institutions can choose to be evaluated on each of the metrics that are going to be chosen, either on excellence, some performance benchmark, or actual improvement over the prior year. The board has decided that the data will just be annual counts. We're not talking about multi-year averages of any kind. And the benchmarks for excellence, I want to explain a little bit. They're going on a point system of 1, 2, or 3. And for most of the metrics, when they were able to do this, what they decided is that an institution would receive 3 points if they attained a level that actually matched the expectation at 2025 for the system. The understanding being is that those institutions are actually contributing a greater portion towards us actually being able to achieve our 2025 goals as a system. 2 points would be given if an institution hit the system average currently. 1 point was somewhat below the average, and then if it was too far below the system average, an institution would receive no points on a given metric. The benchmarks for improvement, all of this is still under discussion, but they wanted to keep it pretty simple. What's under discussion right now is more of an approach where 1% of an increase in an improvement or a percentage point, depending on whether it's a rate metric or not, would be 1 point, 2% increase would be 2 points, and 3% would be 3 points. Currently, all of the metrics are being discussed to be weighted equally. However, that is under further conversation. As you might well imagine, there are differing opinions throughout a state university system with institutions with as much variety as we have in this state. And the idea would be that 2014-2015 would be the pilot year. If you look at the expectations, when you get down to the 9th and 10th metrics in that first category, you'll see that one of them is actually a Board of Governors choice, and then the last one is actually what we're going to be asking you to vote on today, which is your recommendation to the Board of Governors relative to a UBOT chosen metric from our university work plan. Relative to the Board of Governors choice, if you look at the second block, metrics common to all universities, and we're the far right-hand column, you'll see 3 highlighted areas, 1, 2, and 3. Where we are in the discussions at this point in time is the Board of Governors staff have made a recommendation in this rank order for one of these to be chosen by the Board of Governors as the Board of Governors chosen metric for University of West Florida. You'll notice that number 1 ranking is given to the percent of bachelor's degree without excess hours. Currently, UWF is tracking above the system average on that particular metric. The other 2 that are under consideration is average high school GPA for incoming freshmen with an emphasis on increased selectivity, and the other one is actually the annual production of baccalaureate degrees. Finally, if you look at the bottom of page 81 and the top of page 82, you'll see the metrics that may be considered for the university-specific metric to be recommended by the Board of Trustees to the Board of Governors. The ones that have the X by it are ones that we included in the last update to the university work plan, including bachelor's degrees awarded to minorities, the number of adults, the 25 and older group in our undergraduate population, and our pursuit of the Carnegie classification for community engagement recognition. What we would like to do today is, as staff, recommend that this board consider the second metric, the one having to do with the number of undergraduates who actually are 25 and older, given a variety of the endeavors and initiatives that we've already discussed today and in earlier meetings. If one applies the same rationale that I discussed for the ratings earlier that the Board of Governors staff has been talking about, how that might play out is that for the excellence points, if we surpass 21% of our undergraduates being 25 or older, we would get 3 points. If we surpass 19, 21 would be 2 points. 17 to 19% of ours would be 1 point. Below that would be 0 points. Just to give you a little bit of information about that, we have been tracking for quite some time in the really the 27 to 30% range. There has been a slight decrease in the past number of years, which could be well expected given our increased emphasis on bringing in more traditionally aged students. And if we're talking percentages, it does have an impact on the overall percent, but we are well positioned above the numeric that is currently in play for the expectation for the 2025 goal, and therefore we will be able to achieve the 3 points on the excellence category. Whether or not we could hit the 1, 2, or 3% improvement, again, it's going to depend a little bit on our mix. However, with all the initiatives in place, including the Complete Florida initiative, the emphasis on working with military-related personnel, and all of the new endeavors as far as on the enrollment planning and the recruitment, as well as the student success and retention endeavors, I think that we are well positioned to be able to keep these numbers moving in the right direction. So with that, Chair Bear, we are suggesting that consideration be given to the board choosing that particular metric for submission to the Board of Governors for consideration.
Thank you. Other questions?
Can you tell us where we are on the percentage of bachelor's degrees without excess hours? Because, again, I think the point there is the Board of Governors set that for every university. That's a big priority for them next year. Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't need the specific number. I mean,
we are, I was just looking at those numbers this morning with a lot of other ones. I'm trying to pull it back into memory. I just noted that we were above the, I think that it's 70, we were at 70% across student types in the last annual accountability report. So we're not quite as high on our first time in college students, completing without excess hours, but it's balanced out by our transfer of students coming in from the Florida college system with AAs as well as our other transfers, and so we're well positioned within the system.
Are there further questions? All right, now I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the UWF unique metric for performance-based funding and provide to the Board of Governors by October 15th, 2013. This metric will be used as one of the criterion to determine UWF's portion of performance funding if received from the Florida legislature. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have one question. Will this be reevaluated every year? Will we pick this each year?
I would be cautious in offering an absolute answer on that because there are plenty of discussions still taking place. However, at the Board of Governors meeting the other day, and for those of you who are in attendance, kind of track me on this, I think what I heard via the webcast was that there was a general sentiment expressed by members of the board that they not be changing, that the metrics themselves not be bouncing around every year, that there will be some continuity relative to the metrics that a given institution was looking at.
Genesis of my question is, given one of our long-term initiatives to enhance the traditional college experience, and you mentioned that you have considered this percentage need to change, particularly with the introduction of football. So I don't want to get locked into a long-term metric that we may be moving away.
If I might, Mr. Chair, one thing about it is that the way this particular metric has been stated is we actually talk in terms of the number as opposed to the percentage in our university work plan. And so we can be presenting it in terms of continuing to improve our numbers or contribute the number of adult students who are enrolled at UWF. And so we're a little less dependent on the percentage increase the increase in the percentage of our of our undergraduates who are 25 or older. I just reiterate that they will actually score us on the higher of the two, either excellence or improvement. So as long as we're maintaining averages way above the system average, even if it's not showing up on the improvement side from year to year on the percentage side, will be okay.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Dr. Bailey and Dave Scott and Flash Gordon.
Thank you, Chair Bear. Chair Bear, members of the Board of Trustees, I have simply one question for you. Are you ready for some football? Yeah. This has been a great and historic week for UWF and football, with the Football Founders meeting held on Tuesday, followed by on Wednesday the Community Maritime Park Association board meeting where we agreed in principle to play down at the Wahoo Stadium. I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the bigger picture, and we are not doing football for the sake of football. You all have heard Dr. Vance talk about wanting to create a traditional experience for our students, one that creates more of an affinity for our students, that create more and better connected alumni. And so she talked about wanting to have more students on campus. In the last 3 years, we've added 500 beds. She's talked about more engagement on campus. You heard Provost Saunders in her report talk about the numbers from Argo Rival. There are more student organizations on campus. We've added 2 sororities, 1 fraternity, and more on the way. And she's also talked about wanting to bolster athletics. You all know that the first women's swimming and diving team, their meet is on October 11th against Florida State and my former employer, Tulane University. There is a plug there. Don't miss it, October 11th. And then there's football. The decision that has been delayed for a couple of years, but now has been out there, has been enacted, and we have our marching orders. And so to talk about how we got here and where we're going from here, I'd like to bring up, again, our athletic director, Dave Scott, and Flash Gordon.
Thank you. Once again, it's an honor to be here today. As a graduate of the University of West Florida, I know this discussion has been had many times. It's probably, since my 5-year term as athletic director, asked of me about every other day or every day. I can tell you I get emails concerning the subject constantly, and it increases. But it's not a decision that was reached overnight. We've been looking at this since 2009, when Dr. Benson and I came on board about the same time. She challenged us to look at our vision for the future. And we put together a committee that included community members, alumni, students, faculty, staff, anybody that really wanted to engage in the conversation. And we met many times, and that was the Athletic Visioning Committee. And we set forth a path for the future that included a great vision for the University of West Florida, with athletics just being a part of that vision. And in Division II, we talk about athletics being the front door to the institution, about using that to promote the perception and awareness of your institution and the great academic programs we have here at the University of West Florida. So in 2009, we reached a vision of three things we needed to do. One was improve our programs and our facilities, and to eventually move on and add football. We've worked on a lot of those things, and we've grown a lot over the last 5 years. Part of that success you saw this morning, and the biggest part of that success was the student athlete you met this morning and what we do. So often you forget that these individuals put in a lot of time and effort and work, and are great representatives of our institution. So from that Athletic Visioning Committee, we went on and made the decision, Dr. Bentz did, to stay Division II. The attributes for Division II match very well with our institution at this time, and the balance in our students' lives and their work effort and who they are. So we made that decision. We did a facilities master plan because we needed a plan for the future so that we don't put our resources into places. We know where we're putting things, and that's created a great vision for the future for the University of West Florida Intercollegiate Athletic Program. We also did a fundraising study and a Title IX review. Out of that came the addition of the women's swimming and diving program, also a football feasibility study. We went back and looked at it again with representatives from students, faculty, staff, alumni, and wanted to really look and see, okay, is this really feasible? And that group came back and said yes. The president in the summer of 2011 made a decision to add football. We stood in front of a field house crowd of over 1,500 students and faculty, and she held up the helmet. I've seen that picture many times on Channel 3 now. It was a great moment, and after that moment, everybody's like, okay, when's it happening? Every day, that's the question. But we didn't have the opportunity of diligence at that time to say, okay, it can happen today. We put together a student life implementation team. That team looked at how we could make it happen. And once again, students, faculty, staff, alumni sat together, and we went through that process. We came together, we set some benchmarks that we thought we needed to hit to do that. Since that time, we've added women's swimming and diving, which Dr. Bailey mentioned. We'll start this fall, and we're very excited at that. We have 25 young ladies that will represent our institution very well starting this fall. With that, again, in the future, we'll do another Title IX review in 2015, as we do this every 5 years, to look at what we add beyond football, because we will have to add additional women's sports once we add football in fall 16. And in fall 17 and beyond, we'll review that from that 2015 Title IX review and look at what we need to add and what sports make sense for us. Many times the questions I always got is, we have a beautiful aquatic facility, how come we don't have a swim team? Well, now we have a swim team. The other question is, when football? Well, we can answer those questions today, and we need your support. And part of why we're here is it's an institutional decision. It's just not an intercollegiate athletic decision. It's a decision for our students, our faculty, our staff, our institution. When we look at our peer and aspirant groups, all those, I think except one, have football, and it's just part of the maturing of our institution in a way to make a connection with our community and use that sport and those student athletes to do that. Part of that question is also where we'd play. Dr. Bailey said, here's a rendering of what Maritime Park would look like. We reached an agreement in concept, and it gives us an opportunity to put off doing some things and check off that part of our list. We have many things to do in the next 3 years, and it's nice to know that we have that one taken care of. The other question people usually ask is who will play. This is a list of our conference members and the ones that have football on the top part. For me, I hadn't sit and watched the TV game last night on 13-19 in Pensacola. I watched West Alabama play Florida Tech. saw a kicker from West Alabama that was from Panama City, another guy from Cantonment on their teams. And it'll be nice to be able to offer that to our local student athletes to be able to come here at the University of West Florida and have an option. As intercollegiate athletics, I think last year we handed out $1.3 million in student scholarships, and those students come and major in a lot of different disciplines. With the addition of swimming and diving and football, that number will go up to close to $2 million to give those students an opportunity, like Kevin talked about this morning, to experience that education at the University of West Florida, like I was able to get when I came in as a grad student. At this time, I'd like to introduce, you already know Flash Gordon. He's chairman of our Football Founders Association. He's also on our Sword and Shield Council and on our UWF Foundation Board to talk about our community involvement.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, Chairman Baird, trustees. We have created a group called University of West Florida Football Founders, who are working to raise funds to help start football. The group is comprised of alumni, of boosters, friends, and wannabes. Yes, we have people who want to be something very, very special at this university. We have met 3 times. The last you heard was Tuesday night this week. Fundraising materials have been developed, including kickoff cost pieces and naming opportunities. We have a plan, we have a desire, we have the energy, and we will prevail. Thank you.
So at this time, again, I'm very honored to stand before you today as a grad at the University of West Florida to put in front of you a resolution for the support of football to be added to the University of West Florida Intercollegiate Athletic Program.
Thank you. I have to say that, of course, Dave has taken a big part in this. It's Judy's dream. She sees what he can do for our university. Gordon, where are you? Gordon Sprague. Gordon is probably the best flag raiser for the University of West Florida. I don't care what we're doing. He is willing to take the lead and be there for us. So for what you've done, I really appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to adopt the proposed resolution 2013.3 in support of enhancing the University of West Florida's student life and playing football in the fall of 2016.
So
Can I
moved.
have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, leave the room. All right, thank you very much.
At this time, we have a little gift to sort of represent the historic moment we have today for each one of the Board of Trustees. We hope we show that with pride.
Director Scott, have you considered recruiting starting now at our local high schools?
It'll start immediately. I mean, our goal is to hire a coach this spring. He'll start recruiting staff and student athletes. We'll probably have some on the spring of 2015, definitely start practices fall of 15, and be ready to play fall of 16. In that game last night between West Alabama and Florida Tech, it was sort of nice to, see Division II college athletes on TV, but also, they mentioned the start of the University of West Florida, and when you look at that rendering up front, you're sitting there sort of like, that could be UWF, or it will be UWF in about 3 years.
3 years from now, we will have played our third game. Remember that.
I do have a question for you, Gordon. Have you been over to Fairhope talking to any of those high schools about moving to Pensacola so they can play for us?
No, but let me mention this. In the state of Florida last year, 82 high school graduates entered D2 football programs out of the state of Florida. The talent is here. That's the state of Florida, not Alabama or anywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. As we move into other business, I do want to call on Pam Dana, who has some information to share with us.
Thank you, Chairman Bear. In Destin, Florida, and that's where I live, Destin, Florida has what they call the Destin Fishing Rodeo. It goes from October 1st through October 31st. This year, we're in our 65th year. Destin community in that area was founded, its history is based on the fishing industry, largely the red snapper with the commercial fishery and then into the for-hire charter. Why that's relevant to this, this board meeting is at the last commencement, President Bentz awarded the Presidential Medal to a very popular and historic personality in our community, Mr. Bruce Cheeves. And Bruce, for 20 plus years, 25 plus years, every single day throughout the month of October from 10 in the morning till 8 at night, educates visitors to our area about different types of fish. He tells fish stories. I mean, the guy's just a walking knowledge bank on just fish species and the Gulf of Mexico. And he's become a face for our community in a lot of ways. And a lot of people come from around the nation to hear him, hear his stories, learn from him. Anyway, for our community, and having President Bentz award him that Presidential Medal, it was very touching. He was truly honored. And I wanted to thank, first of all, the university administration, Dr. Brown, who's not here, Dr. Bentz, for doing that for Bruce, doing that for our community. As you know, there is a UWF campus in Fort Walton Beach, which is our BOT's Destin, so it was important to that campus. The brochure or the program that goes out annually for that Destin Fishing Rodeo, it's a slick publication. This one is 75 pages long. Hundreds of thousands of issues are printed and sent, and people read every single page. At any rate, on one of the pages, I wish I would have brought one for the entire Board of Trustees, but I forgot to. Anyway, there's an entire page that's devoted to that presidential award, and it has a really cute picture of President Bentz giving Bruce Cheeves in his gown and cap this medal. And it's a very nice article that they wrote, and it's called School of Fish Heads. Longtime Destin Weighmaster gets Presidential Medal from UWF. So it highlighted the role that UWF plays with our community. It endears our community more towards UWF. And a lot of people are gonna, have a better appreciation for the university, and I just appreciate Dr. Bentz for doing that and the administration for supporting her.
Thank you, Pam. We appreciate you bringing that to us today. Right. Is there any other new business come before the board? I do want to remind you, please, to, number one, fill out your meeting survey, and number two, the events on the bottom of your agenda, upcoming September 26th, the State of the University address, followed by campus-wide barbecue. The 18th, the Board of Trustee committee meetings, to be held at Scenic Hills Country Club. We'll make sure that club makes money. The 19th, travel to the Board of Governors, Board of Trustees Summit. Those of the trustees who are planning to go, please get with Becky for arrangements. And the 13th will be our Board of Trustee meeting here at the Conference Center. And the fall commencement will be on December the 14th. And that concludes this meeting. Thank you. Stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Chair Bear, I like that word. Chair Bear.